Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. As always, I cannot wait to introduce this guest to you. Before I do, I want to thank some people that we always thank. We want to thank brassandwinds.com. Brass and Winds are friends of ours, and anytime we need musical instruments at the Willow School, we have always relied upon them. Thank you, Brass and Winds, for everything you do. Welcome to Truer MU. You are now in my musical mind, where you can learn about the things that interest me, and I hope you'll find that an interesting journey. I want to introduce our guest to you now. If you are regular fans of this show, as I hope you are, you know that even though we call ourselves The Truth About Music, we do sometimes interview guests who are tangential to music or even completely unrelated to music, just because of the mindset. We've interviewed authors, we've interviewed a television colorist. In this case, the job is related to music, but let me introduce this another way. I have a cousin in show business. Now, my cousin and I have known each other for many, many years. But in this odd interview, we are going to pretend like we have never met.
We're doing that? Okay.
Well, not really. But I'm just saying, I'm going to be talking to you as if, I'm going to be asking you questions that anyone might ask you. Sharon Feingold is an internationally recognized voiceover actress whose signature sound can be heard on audio and video projects around the globe. She can be heard daily by viewers of HGTV, a top 10 cable network for primetime viewers aged 25 to 54. She's also the station imaging voice of many top-rated radio stations in the U.S. and Canada, and is the voice of the plane train at Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. Sharon Feingold, welcome to our show.
Thanks for having me, Adam.
Shh, don't tell anyone. Nepotism. It's great to have you here.
I knew someone. That's how I got on.
That's right. That's how you got on this crazy show. I mean,
it's great to
not just anyone can be on this show.
I know. I was like, what do I wear tonight? And I brought out my finest hat.
I'm so glad you did. Well, okay. So the reason I brought you on the show is because, this is interesting. Now, you are a voiceover actress, and you said something interesting in an interview with Michael Libby that I'm just fascinated by. You said, no one is that curious about us. I am, and I find it hard to believe that, is it true that voiceover artists are sort of the underdog, like they're all around and everywhere, and yet nobody really wants to know about them? Do you think that's still true?
I can't believe I said that, because did I mean that? What was the context of that question? I mean, I think people are really, really interested in voiceover, but maybe what I mean is, like, when it comes to the people that are just like, thanks for holding. I'll be with you in a month. Maybe I don't remember what the context was, because I do know that there is a lot of fascination about voiceover people.
Mm-hmm.
But only in some contexts, I mean, of course, anybody that's like, in video games and animation and shiny stuff like that. But I don't do a lot of shiny stuff. I don't consider myself someone in like showbiz necessarily. I consider myself as someone who like acts with her voice, but is also maybe like part salesperson,
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to go back and listen to that interview. That was a really nice interview.
It is a really nice interview. I
enjoyed
highly
that.
recommend people find that. Well, let's talk about this then, because when I think voiceover, I just think, okay, voiceover person. But you seem to be indicating there's a lot of strata here. What are these stratas of the voiceover industry?
I think it's changed a lot. Like, I feel like, let's say 50 years ago, anybody who did voiceovers was probably like the good old days, all those guys who knew each other and drove around in their limos and did In a World. And, it was a lot of men, and it was, some women maybe. And I would have maybe at that point called it a voiceover industry.
Mm-hmm.
Now I call it a skill that can be applied to many different industries.
Oh.
So, because when you think about it, I mean, there are scales that talk and tell you how much they weigh. And there are, GPS systems, and that's, two totally different industries. One is, healthcare, and the other is, transportation. So I definitely think of it more as like a skill that can be applied to many different industries. And it's as niche, it just keeps getting more and more niche. I mean, now there's like AI voices, and I don't even, that's like the, dystopian niche.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think there's just like a lot of different, I don't even remember the original question.
You're answering it. We're talking about strata of voice.
Yeah, the strata. I mean, so yeah, I think there's many strata, and it's continuing to expand. Then
Hmm.
there's, niche within the niches, people who maybe they read like fan fiction or, so I
Yeah.
mean, also because anybody can build a studio, anyone can have a microphone now. Anybody can also just say they've done voiceovers. There's no like licensing company. There's no like rules where the government makes sure that you know what you're doing before you do a voiceover. So
Well, okay, hold on. I'm going to call you on that because there's
yeah,
always gatekeepers in every industry. You're saying there's no gatekeepers in this industry?
not
Nobody
really.
who really?
There's not really, I don't, there's no legal gatekeepers.
Well, not
There's
legal,
no,
but
there's no
people that.
licensing. I mean, there are gatekeepers like, top celebrity voiceover people have their agents and their managers.
Mhm.
There are definitely, you know, competitive niches and top agents and things like that. But there's no, there's definitely been like over the last 20 years, I've definitely seen a lot more like voiceover conventions and um more of like an official sort of like there are voice awards now and there's things like that, but it's still very like diffuse and nebulous as an industry. And it's
Hmm.
weird now because of pay to play sites and like I said, like people having their home studios. It's like anybody who wants to, any of my friends, I always just say my grandmother could do voiceovers if she wanted to. Like once you've recorded your voice and it's been put to use, who's to say that you're not a voiceover person? So I think the gatekeepers are sort of an invisible like shield of traditionalist people like me who are like, I've been in it for 20 years, it's more of a psychological thing. Veterans of the industry and but you can be as veteran as you want. There's still somebody up and coming, so I don't know. I don't really know that it has gatekeepers like a lot of different things do.
Are radio personalities considered voiceover people?
Let me think about that. I've never been asked that question. Probably, well, it depends because radio personalities often will voice over spots. I tend to think of a voiceover is as acting with your voice,
Mhm.
usually. Again, that's not necessarily true, but acting with your voice for a commercial end. Someone is paying you because you have a skill with your voice. But again, like I said, it's kind of nebulous. Like, what does that really mean? So I don't know that like voiceover, like DJs on the radio would be like, I'm a voiceover guy, but they might be like, I'm a DJ and I do a lot of voiceovers for the station.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
as a career, I don't know if they would say, yes, I'm a voiceover person, but they would probably have that in their cap as one of the things that they do.
Mhm. Well, let's take this further. I'm thinking my favorite example of this is Tom Selleck. Yeah, everybody my age knows Magnum PI. And Tom
Yeah.
Selleck at some point seemed to just emerge into the voiceover industry. You started hearing his voice in places. Um, but he's an actor first. Is there a distinction between actors who wind up in VO versus people who are really just voices?
Um, I don't really think so. I have to think about this. I'm gonna go back later and listen to this and be like, you had an opinion on that. What, but I mean, I don't think so. I mean, ultimately, if you're lending your voice because you're talented at doing it and you're getting paid to do it, it doesn't really matter how you got there.
Huh.
It's not like you can't be a lawyer, you can't be a lawyer unless you go to law school. Even if you know the law perfectly well. It's not the same with voiceover. If someone's paying you because it's your first time and you've got a wonderful delivery, then that's really no different than the celebrity who also does some voiceover on the side as part of their acting career.
Hmm. Well, let's talk about
But
standards a little. Sorry,
well,
you're
there
not
is,
finished.
I was gonna say there is definitely like the people like me who are like, I would like to be a full-time voiceover person and that's my thing. Like there
Yeah.
is a kind of like a club of many of us, but it doesn't mean anything. I mean, there's plenty of people who do it part-time and there's people who do it
Mhm.
once a year and there's people who are involved with all aspects of entertainment and also do a little bit of voiceover, but there is a group of people that are like me that this is our main thing.
Right.
But ultimately the performance and the ability to do it is what matters, to do it and do it well.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. For
Okay.
instance, in music, yeah, anyone can be a musician, anyone can be a songwriter,
Yeah.
but you're going to need a certain skill set and also a certain networking set to get out in front of a large crowd of hundreds of thousands of people. Uh,
Hmm.
what are the strata of skills that you think are needed to, first of all, enter the field, then succeed in the field, and then excel in the field?
So I think with any creative endeavor, and when I say creative, that's also loose, but like, whether you're a graphic designer or you want to do podcasts or you're a voiceover person, you have to create a brand of some sort. You have to understand how you're communicating what you are and what you have to offer to the world, and they have to understand that in return. And hopefully there's brand identity and brand image. So your brand identity is what you think your brand is, and your brand image, this is back to my MBA, but your brand image is what people think you are. And ideally your brand image and your brand identity are one and the same. So, you know, I would tell my students, like, even if you're a graphic design artist and you have an incredible ability to draw, you still have to be out there in the world developing a business. So business, brand, whatever you want to call it, or the combination of all those things, like that's a pretty vital skill these days. Because as you know, like even in music, I mean, you watch like shows like America's Got Talent, and these people have come from nowhere. Nobody's heard them, and they're phenomenal. Many of these people are that have never been heard before are better than people that are already famous. It's the old like Madonna analogy, like
Hmm.
not the greatest dancer, not the most beautiful person, not the best songwriter, not the best singer, but like kills it overall in what
Right.
she's doing. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Sorry, was that offensive to Madonna?
No, no. In fact, I mean, I don't know how she would feel about it, but I think it's a great compliment because it indicates she's done her work and she knows who she is.
Yeah,
She's not out there pretending to be Pavarotti. She doesn't care about
right,
that. She knows
right.
what she can do, and she's doing it better than anyone else could do her.
Right. She does a lot of things really well. Is she the most brilliant in the world? No. But I mean, what it also shows you is there's room for anybody with a good brand and a good business sense to develop, their reputation and their business. And all the more so if you have a phenomenal voice like one of these people on America. So talent is important, but it is not talent is a piece of the puzzle,
Hmm.
but grit and brand development and um, passion for seeing things through, those are some really important skills. So that's kind of like the business end. And then within voiceover itself, like the basic stuff, like being able to change your voice if the director wants you to add more volume or be a little quieter or change the tempo, work with timing. I mean, there's a lot of like, hey, that was 11 seconds and we need it in 10 and a half. And
Hmm.
like splitting those hairs, like, okay, so I did it 11, what feels like around 10 and a half, So that acting, I mean, acting is huge. Not, I don't know if you're a Meisner fan,
Uh-huh.
uh,
No,
but
I'm not sure which Meisner. There's Randy Meisner from the Eagles, but that's not who you're talking about.
no, Meisner as in the acting technique, Meisner.
Oh.
He in his philosophy was that you should be living truthfully under imaginary circumstances.
Ah.
So his that there's many classical acting techniques, and his was built on the idea that um, you're in this imaginative place, but you're living very truthfully in that imaginative place. And so I think like that skill as an actor is really great for voiceover because people, even though they know that you're a voice actor, if a certain authenticity comes through, and you can, even though I'm not a nurse, but if I can be a nurse truthfully in that moment that I'm reading that script, um, then that believability connects to the listener.
Mhm.
So there's many, many, many different skills from timing to acting to business acumen and all those things, but it's kind of how you put them all together.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a wonderful example. I wish I could remember who was talking about this. It was some actor who happened to catch Robert De Niro in a reading.
Hmm.
And he mentioned that when Robert De Niro just read his lines in the reading, De Niro didn't do anything. He didn't act the lines. He just read them. But it was so remarkable as he read them because he was that person. But he didn't have to act. Uh, it's and that astounds me. There's something of it. He was acting, of course, but he wasn't pretending to be someone else. He took the situation he was reading and he said, "What if I was in it?"
Yes, that's Meisner.
Yeah, yeah.
That's exactly Meisner. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. I mean, I think it's kind of like singing. I guess I'm classically trained and I've been a singer for many years in some way, shape, or form. I've done some jingle work. And I know my biggest flaw was listening to myself sing. I wanted to hear myself sing.
Mm,
And to me, that's a little bit of a fatal flaw in singing because it takes you out of the authenticity. Not only does it take you out of your instrument, but you become an observer and you become a listener,
hmm.
and you lose that ability to just be in tune with yourself as an instrument. And I think the same thing applies to voiceover.
Well, you do have to listen to yourself. I want to make sure we make a distinction here for people that are thinking, "Oh, I shouldn't listen to myself when I sing."
Good
It,
point. Good point.
you do have to listen to yourself, but only to the extent that you need to listen to yourself to adjust for the situation.
Right. And I think maybe it's a listening that's a little bit more internal versus
Hmm.
being your own audience. Does
So
that make
when I taught middle school, I quickly learned that the kids did not want to hear me talking so that I could hear myself talk. They quickly destroyed that in me,
Yes.
so that anything I said had to be relevant and it had to be on point quickly, or they would
Yeah.
tune me out immediately. Is this kind
Right.
of what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think so. I just think that, if we're so enamored with how we sound, if I think that's what it is. It's not about necessarily what you're saying. It's being enamored with ourselves as performers versus feeling the performance.
Where do you think that comes from? I mean, it's a very human, natural thing to do and easy to fall into.
Where do I think it comes from?
Yeah. Why would we do that?
I think it's instinctive. I think it's part of the joy, right? Like the thrill of acting, the thrill of singing. I think it's normal. And I think, like you said, and you corrected me in a good way, some of that is important. Um, but like, let me give you an example. Like, it's like saying to somebody, let's say their line is, I love you, dad. It's like saying to them, say it like this, I love you, dad. But that's just a cadence and a inflection, and it's one dimensional. But if it's coming from within them and they're not listening to sort of like this outside manufactured one dimensional um scripted line, then the authenticity is there. So I do think it's normal. Like, I think maybe an actor would think, how would I say I love you, dad? But what would be better is how would I feel I love you, dad, and then communicate that.
Mm. Well, so um, you've got some people who are professional and successful who aren't necessarily authentic, and you've got other people who are very authentic who can't make a living.
This is
Uh,
true.
so
Authenticity
let's.
is not everything.
I mean, no, it's. I mean, it's true. I mean, you just. I don't know. I mean, there are people who do car ads and they're authentic in the car ads, and you can really feel it. And then you want to go buy a Toyota, and then there are
Right.
other people who get the job to be the Toyota voice, who are
Yeah.
just there, and you're just listening to them.
Yeah.
So you don't really have to be authentic to have a job, and being authentic doesn't get you the job. So how do you negotiate this?
I think being authentic means that you're married to your craft as an actor. You know what I'm saying? And
Mhm.
that your desire is to connect with the realness of whatever situation you're in. So whether it's in a intense passionate moment on stage, or whether you're selling a granola bar, you're really feeling it. And that's the job as an actor, is to deliver authenticity. That being said, luckily for all of us who are not Oscar award winning actors, mediocrity is okay too. It cuts it, it
Yeah.
cuts it. And especially in voiceover, there's a lot of stuff that's not like, I'm not going to be perfectly authentic when I'm like, Ford's authorized clearance is here, you know.
It
But
is.
so yes, I mean, yes, is there a level to which this is like intellectualizing something that's not that intellectual? I think that goes back to the brand thing.
Mhm.
Like, how are you as a person? Are you relatable? Are you good at networking? Are you authentic in what you're bringing to the table just as a person? um but yes, you don't have to be pretty much with anything other than maybe the Olympics. Let me think, am I going to go back on what I'm saying? Possibly. I'll let you know. You can put a little note in the comments. Um, for the most part, you can be good. You can be good, maybe not even great, but pretty good. Great and excellent, if you have a good brand, I think will always stand out. If you can find that audience, but good is sometimes good enough.
So why be great then?
That's a good question. I've never had that question. I love that question. I'm just going to answer without thinking about it and maybe change my mind later. I think for me, I'm a perfectionist, for one. Two, how great is it when the world can get Olympic level acting from us, or Olympic level art, or Olympic level writing? It's beautiful and it's extraordinary. So what a gift to the world. Um, so I think it's, yeah, I think because if you have a gift, to give it is an incredible thing to do. Um, but I also think that trying to be great allows us to grow towards something. And that process is also important. So that's my answer to a very deep question that I have not thought anything about.
Well, if you
What do you,
think,
I mean, what do you think?
what do I think? Whose
Yeah.
show is this? I don't have to answer that question. I'm not great. I'm not going to answer that question.
You're very
No,
great.
I actually think, thank you. I thank you so much. I
You're
think
so great.
this is why I do that. So someone will tell me, yeah,
Yeah.
I think you answered the question well enough. I really don't think I can add much to it. It was a
I would
wonderful,
rather be great than well enough, but that's okay.
well, I mean,
I'm kidding. I'm
as
kidding.
if great was an apple you could just hold in your hand. I mean,
Right.
there's so many different levels. Great is kind of like, it's great in the situation that you're in, and it has to change every time. I mean,
Right. Right.
if you're doing the Toyota commercial, then being great does not mean making people cry, because that's just going to get in the way of them buying a Toyota.
Right.
So,
But if you can be great at a somewhat real yet enthusiastic sound,
right.
good enough. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, be great
Then it
just
becomes about
because.
pleasing your customer. Then it becomes about being great as an actor to work with.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so there's different kinds of great, right? I guess
Yeah.
there's great to work with. There's great at what you do.
Yeah.
It's of interest. We could go on forever about this. This is really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.